Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the SOLA Network Leaders Podcast, where we strive to strengthen leaders and churches to shape a gospel future for the emerging generation of Asian Americans and beyond. What we're striving to do here is to have every episode voice the pastors and practitioners and ministry leaders so that we can learn from them as they actively shape the gospel future. And my name is Chang, and today I'm excited to have joining me today Jonathan Holmes. And Jonathan, thanks for having us. I'll probably just hand it over to you if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm sure we're going to get into it. There's a lot of things the Lord's doing through you, but introduce yourself, please, and what keeps you busy, what's your day job, and what's your passions and your aspirations.
Yes. Well, thanks, Will, and thanks to SOLA for having me on. I really appreciate it. I love the ministry of SOLA and all that it's doing in the Asian American community. I currently serve as the executive director of Fieldstone Counseling. It's a counseling center that's based in Northeast Ohio. We have locations here in Northeast Ohio as well as in Michigan, but we do remote counseling all across the globe. And then I also serve as the interim executive director at CCEF, which is the Christian Counseling and Educational Foundation. And our mission at CCEF is to restore Christ to counseling and counseling to the local church. And we do that through our teaching ministry, through content, our journal, through a lot of different resources that we try to provide for the local church. This November, I will be happily married to my wife, Jen, for 20 years. We were out on a date last night and we were talking about our anniversary, and we could not believe that we've almost made it to 20 years, which is a big milestone for us. So happily married for 20 years, and I have four girls. So four girls ranging in age from 16 all the way down to 10. I'm a member and an elder at Parkside Church, have lived in Northeast Ohio for the past 17 or 18 years. Love the Midwest, love my job. In terms of aspirations, I would say probably not too much. I mean, most of my aspirations are eat a good meal, spend good time with my family on the weekends, watch my girls play basketball, and that's about as ambitious as I get.
I mean, it sounds like at the very least you're super busy and leading just two pretty significant organizations that really provide counseling resources to the broader evangelical landscape. If you might mind me asking, maybe you could back up a little bit and maybe share about like how your personal experience growing up in the Midwest, like what was that like? How did that in some ways like shape the way you think about the need for counseling among Asian Americans and for yourself, and
Yes.
find some thoughts about along those lines.
Yeah. Well, I came to the Midwest through my wife. I actually grew up in the deep South. I'm adopted.
Mhm.
So, that's sometimes when people meet me in person for the first time, I've seen my name, they look at my last name and they're like, okay, something's not adding up here. And so, I'm adopted from South Korea. My parents at the time when I was adopted, they lived in South Georgia. So for most of my life, I grew up there. And it was, I came over in the big rush in the early 80s when Korean adoption was at a pretty all-time high. And I think in terms of just my own experience growing up, it felt very different than what I think many adoptees' experience looks like today.
Mhm.
Um, Nobody looked like me. I have a kindergarten picture that I still have framed somewhere in my house, but half the class was African American, half the class was white. And then right there in the center was this little Korean boy in a blue polo shirt. So that was my that was my upbringing growing up, um, and connecting that question to what you're also asking about counseling and just the need for it. Back then, I mean, I don't even think that was even a concept for my parents, for my adopted parents to, potentially pursue counseling either for themselves in parenting an adoptee or in pursuing counseling for me as an adoptee. So counseling was just not even a part of my life or a part of the conversation until probably I went to college. And there at Masters, which is a small liberal arts school in California, I studied counseling along with history and thought maybe I'd be a history teacher, but kind of fell into counseling. And I would say my dominant experience with counseling is that, especially within Asian American context, it's a little bit of an uneasy relationship. It's a relationship where, in terms of whatever particular generation you might find yourself in, you might have varying degrees of either openness or apprehension about pursuing counseling. So whereas counseling might be seen as, spilling family secrets or dishonoring people, it could be more frowned upon. Um, I think maybe newer generations and later generations are a little bit more comfortable with counseling and seeing the benefits of it. But I definitely think it's an uphill climb, especially within the Asian American community, and especially within even the adoptee community, which is a huge frontier, I think, for counseling, for people to be able to receive help and hope. So,
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And so, would you say that when you first began to explore and study counseling and history within masters, was that like a general interest, or to think about maybe this is something that you could do? Did you foresee yourself being sort of involved in counseling the way that you were, or
yeah.
is it more just exploring for your own
Yeah.
needs?
Well, the honest answer is no. Like counseling was kind of like my backup plan. It was more just I thought people were interesting and I wanted to be able to kind of unite two key themes in life of how do I know scripture and how do I know people? And how do you do both of those things well? And so counseling provided an opportunity for that. But history was, what I was hoping to do more work in. I had a great high school history teacher who just made a big impact in my life. And I thought, man, if I could go and do that and teach history and loved reading about history. But what happened was when we moved back to the Midwest, my wife and I, to the church where she grew up, kind of, there was an opening for a counseling pastor, kind of care pastor position in a part-time way that I kind of eased into. And as you oftentimes know, Will, in ministry, part-time quickly became full-time. And before you knew it, I was off to the races. And so the Lord really kind of directed my steps there because I think I had a plan for my life, which was kind of get my master's in history, do further grad work there, maybe teach either at the high school or graduate level. But the Lord had other plans, and I ended up in the local church and then ultimately here at Fieldstone and CCEF.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so switching gears a little bit along those lines, but related, is that you seem to be a prolific writer in many ways. And I think your most recent book, which Kathy and I have been started to read, is Grounded in Grace, which I think is a very much needed book in the counseling realm, but also just as parents. And could you share a little bit about how that conviction arose? Was it just you saw a constant need? I mean, the
Yeah,
children of today is very different. What was that process like
yeah.
for you?
Well, that's a great question too, Will. I would probably say in my counseling practice, I began to see, and I think you probably hear it too, and you have daughters as well.
Mhm.
There's a lot of conversation right now with kids and teens about mental health. I mean, you can't open up a blog, you can't open up a browser on your phone or listen to cable news and not hear at some point about just really alarming trends as it relates to kids in depression, teens in suicide. I mean, every problem you can imagine under the sun. And here's what I found is actually a common thread underneath all those issues is actually issues of identity. It's an issue of who do I belong to? Why am I here? Who made me? Some of those big existential life questions that historically people would go to their parents to answer. They would go to scripture to answer, or to their church, or to some type of external trustworthy institution. And in the breakdown of trust in some of those institutions and relationships, people and teens and children especially are just told, well, kind of dig deep down inside and figure out your identity or figure out who it is that you want to be. And while the appeal of that is quite enticing, right? Because you get to be in charge. The other side of that is that's actually quite a lot of pressure, I think, on kids and teens to figure out who it is that they are. Why are they here? What's their purpose in life? I mean, in sixth grade, I was, lucky enough to get through math class and recess. I wasn't struggling with existential questions of identity. And yet I think a lot of our kids and teens are. They see social media influencers out there on TikTok and Snapchat, and they think, do I want to be that? And how do I be that? And how can I make myself that? And when that doesn't happen, right, they
Mhm.
can get depressed, they can get anxious. I mean, there's so many different iterations of how I think identity and mental health connect with one another.
Mhm.
And so the book really kind of came out of a desire to see myself grow in my own parenting with my four girls,
Mhm.
as well as trying to help the parents and the families around me at my local church and practice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you see, or maybe you could elaborate, um, given what you're saying in terms of the younger generation struggling to find their identity, given multiple voices that they face in this world, is there how would you articulate or see that playing out within different cultures? Let's say an Asian American family
Mm.
versus an African American versus Latino, or even an
Yeah.
Anglo. Are there is there much more commonality between the struggles that you see different family ethnicities and cultures,
Yeah.
or is there certainly significant nuances?
Yeah, you know what? There probably are a lot of nuances as you kind of go culture to culture and in, general terms of speaking about more Western culture, more Eastern cultures. But even, in Eastern cultures, I mean, East Asia is very different than Southeast Asia. And, there's different microcultures. So I'll just maybe speak to a few that I think I've encountered. Specifically within Asian American culture, I think that younger kids and teens today probably want to explore a little bit more, even outside their own ethnic identity. They're more willing to try new things, to engage in new expressions of culture and culture making activities, whereas maybe older generations, either through language or through who they socialize with or where they live, maybe want to maintain more of a homogenous ethnic identity and culture. And so sometimes maybe the breakdown that you see within an Asian American culture could be more generational. It could be more older parents wanting to hold on to some of the reins of identity of, hey, this is who you are, and this is what you're supposed to do, and these are our expectations of you. Whereas younger generations are probably more self-directive, wanting to draw maybe more of that meaning, less so from their ethnic background or their cultural background, and more from their friends, their peers, from pop culture, etc. And so the difficult dynamic of that is that sometimes maybe it pits older and younger against one another, or it creates opportunities for misunderstanding. And so one of the benefits or one of the hopes that I have for the book is that a parent or a teen or a parent and a kid could pick up the book, and instead of those differences in how we approach identity becoming opportunities for disagreement, they could become opportunities for understanding and compassion and curiosity and actually growth in those relationships.
Mhm. If I could follow up with a question then on the point you made about generations, and this was an observation that I heard that older generations are more outer facing, and like you mentioned, they derive their identity either from their family
Yeah.
or a certain level of their accomplishments. But in this day and age, with the advent of mental health and self-care, that in some ways there could be a swinging of the pendulum potentially too far, where someone is always looking inwardly
Yes.
in the name of self-care, even
Yeah.
to the detriment of not necessarily being outer facing or loving
Yeah.
or serving our neighbor. Do you find that to be the case? And if so,
Yeah.
how would you guide parents or people to say, no, these are some sort of guardrails so that you could prevent it from swinging too much where the person is just looking forever internally,
Yeah.
existentially into
Yes.
their own
Yes.
suffering?
No, well, you're absolutely right. So again, we're speaking in broad generalizations here, but an older generation would have really held tightly to what sociologists would call a traditional identity formation process, which is very externally facing, where you derive your sense of who you are from who your mom and dad were, what culture you grew up in, what was expected of you, meaning that a lot of the identity markers were somewhat preset. So if you grew up in fifth century England and your dad was a baker, well, guess what you were going to be? You're going to be a baker. If you grew up in, seventh century France and your dad was a farmer, guess what? You were going to be a farmer. So there wasn't a lot of room for creativity. And I think in our modern culture, we've really turned that around to where the authority doesn't lie outside of you for identity. It lies inside of you. So you really get to be the defining authority on who it is that you want to be and how you want to function in the world. Now, here's where the piece about self-care and mental health, I think, kind of takes a little bit of a turn because we've told an entire generation, hey, be whoever you want to be. Pursue your dreams, live your own truth, be your authentic self. And you would think that in our culture today, with all the resources that our kids and teens have, that they would be the happiest people ever, right? They'd be the most well-adjusted, most mentally healthy generation ever. But that's actually not the case. And
Mm,
I think the reason why is that each of those different identity formation processes both have some good in it, but they also have some bad in it. And so the via media that kind of cuts between more of a traditional identity formation process and a modern identity formation process is ultimately what we talk about in the book is a gospel identity process, which simply put, a gospel identity, and I got this from Tim Keller, so it's not mine. He says a gospel identity is received and not achieved. A gospel identity is received and not achieved. So we don't have to achieve it. So in Asian American culture, we place a high value on achievement, accomplishment, recognition, making a contribution. We don't have to gain our identity through that, through our GPA, through where our, college degree is from. But on the other side of that, we also don't have to just figure it out on ourselves.
mm,
We also don't have to just dig deep into our feelings and construct an identity. God has already given us not only authoritative words about who we are, He's given us good and flourishing words about who we are. And so I would love to see parents and pastors and ministry leaders and counselors really be captivated by a vision of what identity is from what Scripture says,
mm.
and to be able to pass that along to those people that they have influence with and that they care for.
Thanks for sharing that, John. That's really, really insightful and very helpful. I mean, we all sort of quote Tim Keller, but I think we also
Yes.
quote you as well, Jonathan. So I think
Now you can quote me who quoted Tim. So, yeah.
yeah. If I could follow up again and in terms of even going beyond maybe thinking about how counseling or identity issues with the younger generation, I want to dig a little bit deeper in terms of some of the specifics or nuances with Asian Americans in general, in terms
Yeah.
of how counseling is. I have my living experience when I was pastoring in California, and then my wife Kathy has some experience here now that we moved over to Georgia. Um, would you be able to sort of elaborate even or speak a little bit more into that? What are some of the challenges? And I think that is the one thing on top of that is not to just homogenize all Asian ethnicities,
Right.
but I guess we could start generally. What are some of the unique challenges that you think face a church or a body of believers that are Asian Americans in terms of really being open to and embracing a counseling culture or to receiving counseling for themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I have somewhat limited experience, and I would even confess so much of my experience because I grew up with two parents who were white and was raised in a fairly majority white culture. A lot of even my experience and exposure to the Asian American church has largely come through relationships with people at SOLA, have come through relationships that have probably been within the past 5 to 6 years, which is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about what SOLA does and the mission that they have, because it's been such an encouragement and even personal blessing to my life. But I would say in observation, one of the first things that I know that sometimes can happen even in my own counseling practice is people will just assume, oh, you're Asian, so you know what the Asian experience is like. And as you know, it's so monolithic. But once you dive into it, there are unique experiences. And so trying to make sure that when we're in counseling relationships with people who are of a different ethnic background than us, or even talking to people who do share ethnic background, that we really maintain a posture of curiosity and question asking, that we don't just make broad-based assumptions. So I'll give you an example. I had one Asian American counselee come, and they were seeing somebody at another practice, and they said, all of the problems came back to shame. They just thought I had this profound shame that I was dealing with. And she said, at the end of the day, I really didn't think it was shame based. And obviously, shame is a big part of Asian American culture. We talk about it a lot, but that doesn't mean that that is the root of every single problem that we struggle with. And that could be a very reductionistic way to understand Asian American culture. So a lot of my counseling experience has been, okay, you have a different ethnic background than I do. What's the starting point for any type of relationship? It's just getting to know each other. It's asking simple questions. I would say maybe there are some broad themes, that I could pull out. One of the broad themes that I would say I do see in certain Asian American cultures and family dynamics is how do older people relate to younger and younger to older, especially like older parents to younger adult children, right? What's the role of boundaries? What's the role of respect and honor? How do language barriers impact relationships between parents and between children and grandchildren? What does it look like when adult children choose to go to a different type of church setting than their parents did? Maybe they don't go to a KM ministry church, or maybe they choose a church that's a bit more diverse. So all of those, I think, would be questions and different themes and patterns that would come up, at least in my counseling experience. What I would say, here's what I'm encouraged by, Will, is I do see more and more Asian Americans, maybe more Gen Z, some younger millennials, being willing to take the step of getting care and getting counseling. So that has been encouraging. I think a lot of that has just been due to just conversation that's been happening, in our current context about the good side of what counseling can do, uh, and maybe some of the influence of good biblical Christian counseling being offered in local churches across the country.
Sure. If you feel someone has been around for some time,
Yeah.
and I've referenced a lot of people over to Fieldstone Counseling, very, very helpful, very fruitful. How would you want church leaders to, who don't have a counseling ministry within their church, but uh, to in a large extent view that church may be the primary area in which people and believers can gain spiritual and gospel health.
Yeah.
How do you see your role leading Fieldstone counseling coming alongside of the church, or maybe in some way supplementing the church, or
Yes.
providing an alternative perhaps? Like, how does that
Yeah.
relationship in your
Great
ideal world
question.
and vision would be?
Yes, yes. Well, we definitely don't want to supplant the church. So I love your word supplementing. So what I normally tell local churches is, listen, at the end of the day, if Fieldstone could go out of business, that the best day of my life. Meaning, if the local church was able to be properly resourced and equipped and able to handle the care within not only their church, but also their community, that would be a win for Fieldstone. Now, cynically speaking, I don't think that that's going to happen. So until that does happen, I think the main way that Fieldstone comes alongside local churches is really through offering counseling services when pastors and ministry leaders feel that the level of complexity exceeds their level of competency.
Mhm.
So when the level of complexity comes at your front door, comes to you on a Monday after Sunday worship, and you realize, okay, this is a little bit above my pay grade. Doesn't mean that I am not responsible for certain aspects of care, but there's a level of competency that humbly and in weakness I'm identifying. That's where I think pursuing an external referral like Fieldstone could be a help. So that would be one way. The second way would just be through our educational resources. So Fieldstone offers a lot of training for local churches at whatever level of care. So if you're like, hey, I'm just kind of dipping my toe into the water, just want to learn a little bit more about biblical counseling, Fieldstone has some great courses for you. We provide a lot of consultations for local churches. So let's say you're a pastor and you've got a really tough counseling case or a really tough issue that you just want to get a second set of ears and eyes on. You could reach out to Fieldstone. We could pair you up for a 50-minute consultation with one of our counselors, and they could just listen and provide some initial feedback. So Fieldstone has a lot of different ways where you could send people to us or where we could send our resources towards you in a way to help build up your local body.
Such a beautiful vision to see how this ministry that's been so robust and fruitful come alongside the local church without supplanting, like as you
Right. Oh,
traditional purpose
absolutely.
of the church. And it seems that actually that might be a good segue, but it seems that the Lord has identified those gifts in you to be able to lead an organization like that. I guess that means, as we all know, or many of our viewers may already know, that it has been announced that you are currently the interim executive director of CCEF. It's probably new. At some point, I'm going to ask you for some prayer requests, but before we get there, what has that experience been like, and what do you think your role during this interim period is? What is that? What do you see your place given this time in leading that organization?
Well, thanks for asking, Will. The biggest transition probably has been just kind of figuring out a little bit of a rhythm of travel. So I live in Cleveland. CCF is based in Philadelphia. So fortunately, it's a quick 1 hour flight. I'm actually at CCF right now currently. So it's been a new rhythm for my family to get used to. So I came into the job right around mid-May, and I have a deep love and deep passion for CCF. And I think one of the first things I tell people about this role is I remember 10, 15 years ago just being so impacted by the teaching of CCF. So CCF has played a key role in my own counseling life. So much of what I have read, learned, do in my own counseling practice has been because of men like Paul Tripp and David Powlison and Ed Welch and Mike Emlet and Julie Lowe and others. So CCF has just played such a special role in my own life, as well as I know so many churches' lives as they've sought to bring counseling to their church in some really practical ways. In terms of my role right now at CCF, I mean, as the interim executive director, part of my goal is to come in and to really listen and care for the people here. So as they've been through some recent transitions with their old executive director going on and moving on, it's been a joy for me to come into the organization to just meet and to love on people, to get to know their stories. So I had set a little bit of a goal by the end of summer to meet with all of our employees. And that's been probably one of the most special times since I've started working here, is just listening to people's stories of how they came to CCF, how CCF was used in their life by the Lord to help grow them. My hope during this interim period is to just establish a little bit of stability, as well as really help CCF think about its strategic mission for the next season of its ministry and life. So, about 5 years ago, we celebrated our 50-year anniversary. With David Pallison's passing quite a few years ago, there's, I think, a little bit of a question mark of, okay, what does it look like for us to really help restore Christ to counseling and counseling to the church? And that's something that I'm excited and energized to think about with all of the colleagues, with all my colleagues here at CCF, and something that, when we think about prayer, that's definitely something that we need prayer for here as we think about the future and as we consider what are the next steps for us as an organization.
Sure. I mean, I think it's obviously transitions can be tough, as you mentioned, but
Yeah.
personally speaking, and also those I talk to, we're very thankful that you're able to step into that role for
Thank
such a
you.
time as this. And so we are excited for the future of Fieldstone, but also CCF and what the Lord will do through you. As we begin to wrap up our time here, Jonathan, I didn't really share this that we're going to do this before, but sort of intentionally so. I just have a couple of questions. I like to do this to so that the listeners and viewers could get a better sense of the person
Yes.
that we're talking to. So I just have a couple of personal questions just to
Great.
ask to kind of get to know Jonathan Holmes a little bit better. And maybe I can start off with this way. Do you have a favorite movie that you like to watch, a go-to movie, favorite movie for the recent years?
Yeah. Okay, so there's a set, probably more serious, but I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. So
Okay.
every Christmas holiday, it is a Christmas tradition, but my family, minus my wife, she's not the biggest Harry Potter fan, but we watch all the movies together. So there are probably there's some movies where you watch them once and you're like, I don't need to watch them again. I
Mhm.
could watch the Harry Potter movies over and over again.
Oh, wow.
So I'll
Okay.
put those down as my favorites.
Okay. So you might have actually answered my next question, which was favorite book. So I'm going to see if Harry Potter says something else.
Well, no, probably, yeah. I mean, I have a deep love for the books. I would say, depending on what genre, I love Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. So I read the book in high school, junior high, maybe, and it's just a book that has stuck with me. I come back to it quite a bit. I've seen the play many times, seen all the different movie adaptations.
Mhm.
So Les Mis would definitely be a big book. Maybe a more recent book that I read that I've recommended to a lot of people is a book called Covenant of Water by
Okay.
Abraham Verghese, and it was a book club pick for Oprah. It's pretty big. It's pretty thick. So if you don't like big books, pick up the Cliff Notes. But it's a wonderful coming of age story of a family growing up in South India. And so if you love plot, if you love family development,
Mhm.
it's an absolute pleasure to
All
read.
right. Well, we'll definitely have to keep that in mind. Do you have a favorite color?
Uh, my kids would say I'm pretty boring. I'm like grays, blues,
Okay.
black.
I mean, we have that in common then. Yeah, not too exciting on my family's
Not yet, not very exciting at all. Yeah,
part.
today I'm actually in gray and black, so
Okay.
that's
I mean, kind of it's the Philadelphia weather here and there. So,
yes, no, it really does. It
yeah.
really does.
Do you have a like favorite food, favorite genre of food?
I mean, I love Korean food. I
Oh,
love Korean. I mean, you and I have had great Korean food
oh yeah.
together. I would say I feel like, Will, I'm trying to make up on lost time because growing up, obviously, I grew up in the deep South.
Mhm.
My family's idea of, takeout was, getting takeout from the local Chinese restaurants. So growing up, I had a significant lack of Asian food, and so that's definitely my favorite. But Korean is obviously my definite go-to.
Okay, great. What do you like to do to release stress aside from prayer?
Yeah, all the holy things. Now, my wife will probably, this is all my kids will tell you this. To relieve stress, Will, I'd probably say cleaning and organizing. So it's kind of weird. It's
Yeah,
probably a part of my own mental processing and trauma and whatnot. But like if I'm really stressed out or if I come home and I've had a long day at work and I want to decompress, I
mhm.
will just start cleaning everything. I mean, dishes, vacuuming, laundry. Um, like my wife literally has to tell me, stop cleaning, like just sit down and take a break. And it's hard for me. So, in probably a not so healthy way, but with good benefits, cleaning, but probably just being with my family. I love reading. I'm a big coffee fan. So, a book and a cup of coffee.
Sure.
I'm a big plant guy too. So I love taking care of plants.
Hmm.
So I'll water my plants, check my plants, that sort of thing. Nothing exciting though. So.
They all seem very effective, and probably my wife would wish that I would release stress in the same way that you do.
Yeah. I can teach you my ways if you
Yeah,
want.
yeah. We definitely have to take you up on that. I guess the
Yeah.
last question I get to know, which is a little bit maybe deeper, who would you say is one of the more influential people at any point in your life?
Yes, yes. So I'll give you three. So in terms of like a mentor father figure, his name's Joe Keller. He's somebody who discipled me through college and has just remained a good friend to me throughout the years. And it's just really been somebody who I could kind of call up at any point, at any time in my life and just get godly advice. And it's one of those relationships where there's an ease. We could be laughing together, hanging out together, and then go to a deep conversation. In terms of just recent people whose writings and ministry have influenced me, it'd probably be Tim Keller and David Pallison. So both of those men, I think, profoundly, profoundly shaped how I think about the gospel, how I think about ministry to people.
Mhm.
Um, I find myself coming back to their writings, their speaking, their messages, probably on a daily basis. They have been great companions to me, both in life and in death.
No, that Pallison and Keller, you're in good company and good hands.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that completely makes sense.
Yeah.
The last question is that you did allude to this in terms of your interim role at CCF, but are there other things that the viewers and myself that we could pray for you during this season?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, and again, not sure when this comes out, but probably here towards the end of July, my family will be taking a vacation, and it's probably my kids we were just talking about it at dinner last night. They were saying this is the one time in the year where we feel like it's just us as a family and we really rest. And so I just want to make sure to be able to preserve that time that even in a season of busy ministry that for at least, we go for about 10 days
Okay.
that it truly is a good time away of just investing in our family, investing in conversations. Um, I would say on a professional level, just continue to pray for CCF and pray for Fieldstone as the Lord brings people to us to care for. We want to be good stewards of that. We want to faithfully serve, but then also remember why we're serving, which is that it's not for our own glory or to make a name for ourselves, but it's to further the kingdom. And so just prayers for humility, for a sense of clarity about our purpose,
Mhm.
and for a sense that when people come to us for help, that it's not something that we say or that we offer that they remember, but that it's who the Lord is and how the Lord comes to them in Christ and through Scripture.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. That's certainly thanks for sharing that. And we'll definitely keep that in prayer. It's such an important work, both as a family man, but also for your roles
Yeah.
at these organizations. And so that ends our time here together. But thank you so much for making time for us. And for all those of you who are listening, thanks for listening to SOLA Network's Leaders Podcast. And if this podcast has encouraged you, we want you to share this with a fellow pastor or leader. And for more gospel-centered resources to equip your ministry, follow us and check us out on solanetwork.org. And look forward to seeing you there. Jonathan, thanks again, and hopefully to connect with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the SOLA Network Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a follow on Facebook or Instagram at SOLA Network, or visit us at our website at www.sola.network.